Welcome to a transformative space where evidence-based tools help you reclaim your personal power, align with your highest path, and let your soul shine brightly to create a life you love. This is soulSHINE, and I'm your host, Dr. Saidie Rodriguez. What if the reason your life doesn't feel right anymore isn't because you're lost, but because you've outgrown the version of you that built it? Today, we're talking about that in-between season, the one no one prepares you for, where everything looks fine on the outside, but internally, you know something has shifted. Hey, and welcome back, soulSHINE. We have a really special guest today, Amanda Powers. She is the host of the Lost and Found podcast, a show dedicated to helping people bridge the gap between feeling lost and becoming more fully themselves. Amanda's work speaks to the in-between seasons of life, the identity shifts, career pivots, emotional unraveling, and quiet moments when the life you built no longer feels like it fits. What makes Amanda's voice so compelling is that she doesn't speak from a pedestal. She speaks from lived experience. Before becoming a podcaster, she spent nearly a decade in national security with academic and professional experience spanning psychology, intelligence, emergency management, and federal service. But after a deeply personal season of self-loss, she made the courageous decision to leave the only dream she had ever known and begin again. Now, Amanda uses storytelling, honest reflection, and deeply human conversations to create a space for what she calls wanderers, people who are searching for purpose, healing, empowerment, and a stronger connection to their true self. Her message is simple but powerful. You are not broken. You are becoming. Welcome, Amanda.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I just got a little teary at that reflection. Like, I do this? Are you sure? Me? People are trusting me with their most precious and tumultuous moments in their life. And it's like, actually, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is, we could even start there. I want to take our listeners back who don't know you to take
Yeah.
us back to the full story, but I think even pausing and like this power of the people, power of the community, power of seeing yourself in someone else with a real name and a real story, and knowing that you're not alone, knowing that you're not broken, as you reminded us in that reflection, that your life is not bad somehow, but we are human, and having that shared humanity as one of our gifts of not only healing, but empowerment and forward choice. So yes, you are the one, Amanda.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's very thoughtful. And thank you for inviting me to be on your show. This is super exciting for me. And I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to get into your story, and I would love to start at the beginning, because I'm sure a lot of people will resonate with your story, and maybe the circumstances look differently. But take us back to that journey, or leading up to the journey, where you had everything sort of on paper and you had a plan and you had these dreams and goals. And then you got there and realized that maybe it wasn't the life that you thought it would be, or what you describe as the self-loss.
Yeah. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. We'll go all the way back, but the upbringing informs why the identity crisis happened, if that makes sense. So I grew up in Nashville, two wonderful, loving parents. They were entrepreneurs. My mom was a computer engineer, one of the first developers to ever be hired by IBM in the 80s, and my female developers to be hired. And then my father was a creative. He did marketing and communications and graphic design and advertising. And they had their own converged paths, but met back up in Nashville and started a family. And I grew up with the dual brain. So my father was always creative and an entrepreneur and opening and starting businesses. And my mom would start businesses, but it was always tech related. So she was always training people in new waves and new development. She started the first school here in Nashville when the Mac computer was released. So she was teaching people how to convert what was used on Microsoft into the Mac computer systems and like train the Word documents and Excel spreadsheets to communicate to each other on the two different platforms. And like teaching people how to create graphics or advertisements and designs on a Mac versus the PC programs. And so we've always been a very analytical and thought-provoking and deep-thinking house, but also a very creative, loud, happy, silly house, because we had both sides of the parenthood. But my father's business is a marketing agency here in town, and one of their clients is the Army National Guard. And so I grew up watching my father hire and work with and mentor veterans from all different branches of the military. And so I was always inspired by and encouraged by those people in my life, and to see them stand up for what they believe in and to sacrifice so much for their country and for their families and for strangers, right? And then I think I was in fifth grade when 9/11 happened. And so, like, it really sunk into me in that moment that, like, this is actually always admired those people. But now I started to realize, oh, this is dangerous, right? Like, they're really putting their lives out there. I want to do something where I can sacrifice and help people too, but I don't know that I want to go all the way down that path. I don't know if joining the military is the right way to do it, but what's the next best thing? And I started really looking into the federal civilian side. What are the available positions that way? And I did talk to some recruiters and things like that. But when I went to college, I went to the University of Mississippi. So I left Nashville and I started out in neuroscience because I knew I liked psychology. I'd always done really well in like anatomy and physiology classes. So I was like, ooh, I'll help veterans on the back end. Maybe I won't be a veteran, but I'll go to medical school. I could work at the VA hospitals or something. So started out with a neuroscience degree that blended into psychology and intelligence and security studies. The University of Mississippi at the time, I think it was in 2010, they got a grant from the Department of Defense and the Defense Intelligence Agency to start one of the first intelligence studies programs where they would go into colleges and train students to build up the analytical workforce for the government. So they would pipeline into specific internships, and we would be trained on all the different analytical skills that the different agencies might need depending on which one you worked for. And so our program was heavily influenced by the FBI, since our director at the time was a 20 plus year veteran as an agent. He was also in the Navy, had dabbled with intelligence there, and he had last worked at the behavioral science unit. So he was part of the groups that were doing all of the psychological evaluations for serial killers and ultimate violent crime trainings there. And so when I met him, I was like, ooh, this is cool. This is even more interesting because now it's like you get into thinking, you were watching Criminal Minds and stuff, in the 2000s. And I realize now that it was extremely exaggerated, right? Just like all the shows are. So I'm sure as a doctor, you're probably watching like The Pit or something now, and you're like, I don't know if it's quite like that. Or like Grey's Anatomy, you're probably going, that's nowhere close to what a real doctor, their life is like. But anyway, I really got into that, but I knew that it would be difficult to get into the government because I think it was 2013, so the year right 2012, 2013-ish, the years right before I graduated, there was a sequestration. So they stopped hiring. And so I was kind of stuck. I wasn't really able to get into the bureau like I thought I was going to be able to right after college. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll keep doing the clinical psychology stuff. I'll apply for PhD programs. And when I tell you, I don't know if it's still true, but at the time in the mid 2000s, joining a clinical PhD school was harder than veterinary school and law school. So like the attrition rates were really, really difficult. They took like most private schools would take more, like 10 to 20 students per year, but like a public school was taking 5 to 6. So I applied to 19 programs.
Wow.
Yeah. God bless my mother. She helped me figure out how to like pick the ones that had the best post-traumatic stress disorder studies and all the different professors that were doing that specifically. And I found one out in Palo Alto, and he was at the time one of the renowned like terrorism studies specifically. So PTSD for veterans that had been abroad and trying to understand counterterrorism measures and the impact that that has on soldiers and stuff while they're in theater. And I thought he would be my best choice because it blended the two things that I loved the most, which was the federal side and the service side. But it was a private school, so it was going to cost, $200,000 or so, plus California and the most expensive county of California. That is kind of like, what do I do? Because that's the only school I got into. And For whatever reason, all of my undergraduate professors are like, oh, you can get into grad school. Like, it won't be that hard, whatever. And my parents just kind of begged me, what do you really want to do? Because if you really want to go to PhD school, we'll support you. But that's such an amount of debt that you're never going to climb out of, or it's going to take you 20 years. And that's assuming you can get a high paying job eventually by your mid 30s that'll help you start paying some of that off. Or if you actually could get hired by a VA hospital, at the time, the government still had a program where if you work for 10 years for the government and you pay your monthly student loans, you could get them fully forgiven after 10 years of payments. So that was kind of the plan. But eventually, lots of things were also happening behind the scenes still in school and with my personal life. And I decided, 200K in debt wasn't really the right choice. Maybe I'll finally take a year off. I'll finally take a break. Like I was that studious straight A kid that had been in regimented programming from, kindergarten through college. And it's kind of like, all right, maybe I should have backpacked through Europe at least once, or I should have done something risky, but like I was too scared because I wanted to work for the government. So I was a goody two shoes most of my life. But I found a contract with FEMA in 2013 to 2014, and it was through the AmeriCorps program. So the domestic version of what the Peace Corps looks like when they go out internationally. And so this particular program was sponsored through FEMA and paid for by them. And they gave us housing and food and transportation, but we would have to deploy to different domestic disasters. So my team responded to places in New York and Baltimore, Alabama, Maryland, DC, and Kansas and Missouri. And so I traveled all over the country and did that. And while I was working for them, they gave us time off to do extracurricular, career advancement, like go and talk to people that we might be interested in the industry or getting us job interviews after the fact. So they were very supportive of like, your contract's going to end, but we'll introduce you to other people. And so I was introduced to a contractor that was hiring for some contracts at the FBI headquarters. And I could go in there at that base rate and they would cover my security clearance. And as soon as the security clearance was approved by the agency, I could go through orientation and do their training. And then I'd be a full-time employee there at the headquarters, which was very exciting. And, little old me, thinks like, oh my gosh, the dream's finally coming true. Like I didn't waste all that time. And, but until that came through, I needed another job. So I moved to DC. I went to Georgetown and signed up for their security studies program and studied terrorism and substate violence. That was my main focus, and got my master's in that while I was working for the FBI during the day as a contractor. And did that job for about 3 years. And then I had a friend who worked for the Customs and Border Protection, so CBP, for a little while. And he was at the White House on a temporary duty assignment. And he was saying, hey, I know you're really good at your job. I know that the contractor is not really, supporting you or promoting you in any other positions. Like, you're not getting the recognition you deserve. I think you should take over my role after my TDY is finished. And so he put in a good word for me, and I had 3 interview rounds at the White House for that position. And then the administration changes and it becomes Trump's first administration. And unfortunately, a few months after that, the division I was going to work for was dissolved because they reorganized the National Security Council. So then I had to kind of start over again. I'm like, oops, I left that really nice job at the headquarters. It wasn't fun all the time, but it was at least stable. And now I had to kind of scramble because for any of your listeners that are in government work or contracting work, contracts can come and go at any time. Despite the government guaranteeing money for the base year, the option year portions are up in the air. They can decide to cut funding, or if they lose funding from Congress, anything like that, it's very, very tricky. So unless you have an agency that you work for or a company that you work for that is willing to move you to another option, they let you go. So it took about 6 months for me to find another job that would pick up my security clearance, because that's an expensive thing to do, to take ownership over it. And once they did, I went back to work for the Defense Intelligence Agency for about 6 months. And then from there, I went to FEMA. But the FEMA job again, this time around, was a full-time actual government employee. So I got a full pay grade raise, access to different types of trainings, and I worked for their external affairs division and deployed after Hurricane Maria and Irma in Puerto Rico. And so that was an eye-opening experience in and of itself. Like I feel like that could be a whole separate podcast about that experience. But I worked there and I accepted that job because I knew that I had already applied for the bureau again after the White House job had closed. And so I applied just directly to the FBI that time because I was like, I'm not going to worry with a contractor. I'm just going to actually try to get in on my own this time.
Mm.
And while I was waiting for their response to my application, I worked for FEMA for I think about 10 months. And then from there, while I was at FEMA, right after I came back from my deployment to Puerto Rico, I got my acceptance letter and they gave you 3 date choices to go to the academy. And so I picked like the furthest out date possible because I needed time because you have to leave your apartment, you got to put all your stuff in storage, you got to because you don't get guaranteed to come back to your home city.
Oh,
So
wow.
I had to like leave the apartment early, had to figure out what to do with my roommate, all my stuff, like sell things, do things, get rid of the car because I wasn't going to use it while I was at the academy and just all kinds of stuff. And eventually went to the academy, did 3 months there as an intelligence analyst, and then was transferred to Philadelphia in October of 2019. But, I thought like, all right, I'm doing it. It finally felt like my actual like big girl job because it was the big girl job I had been, dreaming about for so long. And it's the first time I was able to buy a house. I just felt like I was, I'm 28. I'm really in the zone, right? Like I'm living it. I'm doing it. I'm doing the thing I told my parents for, 10 plus years. Like I'm finally doing the thing that I told you I was always going to do. And
Wow.
the silly thing was I was already doing it, right? Like
Mm.
I already picked a degree I liked. Number one, I already liked who I was as a person, right? I was already on my own independently trying to get these balls rolling, So it was one of those where I look back on 28-year-old me and I'm like, little did she know she had already accomplished so much.
Yes.
I wasn't giving myself credit for the things that genuinely deserved credit because I was going off all the superficial things that society always tells you. Like you're supposed to have done all this, and this by this point. And I hadn't. So anyway, but I get to Philadelphia. Everything starts out okay, in 2019. And then of course, March of 2020, all hell breaks loose all across the entire globe. And we have to just pretty much restructure. The Bureau told us, all the field offices operate in different states. So the FBI is not only based in DC, they have offices spread out across all the different states and territories. And so because each state operated differently during COVID and had different rules for how to protect yourselves or, wearing your masks or not masks or gloving up or airplane routes, are the borders closed or not closed? How long do you quarantine for? Whatever. All the
Mm.
states had different rules, so all of the FBI offices had to have different rules because they had to follow whatever the state governments were doing. So Philadelphia was very unique because we were right next door to New Jersey. So we had people coming in from New Jersey, New York, and from Virginia and Maryland as well. So everything got very, very chaotic in Philly. And so it was a really tough time because I was already living on my own and I hadn't been there for very long. And I hadn't made a whole lot of friends other than the office. But when I went into the office now during that year, the rules would change. 1 month I wasn't allowed to go in at all. 1 month I had to go in every day. 1 month I only went in every other week. And then 1 month I went in every other day of the week. So like I'd go in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the next week I was in Tuesday, Thursdays. So like if you were working on projects or cases with other people, you wouldn't really interact with them correctly all the time. So like communications would get lost and tensions were high and it was just a very, very stressful time. So if any of you are sitting there thinking like the government figured out what they were doing, no, they didn't. But like the same way anybody was struggling, we were struggling too. And I could tell it was impacting a lot of, it was hard for me as an individual single person just for the loneliness, but it was especially hard I saw on like my managers and other fellow coworkers that had family members or little kids and
Mm.
your whole life got uprooted that year. Everyone
Mhm.
did, right? And so lots of crazy stuff happened to me that year. Like I got followed home multiple times. I had
Oh my
people trying to
gosh.
pull me into their vans.
What?
Yeah, not like a case or where anything was happening, but just the area in Philly was just a little bit hectic. I yeah had somebody follow me all the way from I because I was in the city. I had like one of those little old lady carts that you push to get your groceries and push them back to your apartment, like because I didn't have a car, right? It was street
Yeah.
parking there, and the insurance was insane to move to that county. So I didn't do it. Had somebody try and follow me home from the grocery store once. Like every time I'd change routes, they would just switch to the other side of the street. Or like if I turned, even though it wasn't my turn yet,
Mm.
they would eventually come down the same turn too. And then I was trying to get into my house and I had all my bags with me and they start trying to come up my stairs like, "Oh, do you need help?" And I was like, "No, absolutely not. No, thank you. Bye." Yeah. Babe,
That's
like, "Hey,
great.
like I'm
Yeah.
home," just
Yeah.
but I wasn't. And nothing in that moment. I was like, I swear if I ever move anywhere else, I'm getting a dog. I'm getting the largest, meanest, angriest looking, but internally sweetest, like dog, because nobody's ever going to follow me home like that again. Unfortunate things like that happened, and at the time, the sewer systems were pretty old, so they were running right through the middle. Philly has a lot of one-way streets, and so
Mm.
all of the sewer systems are directly under that one-way path. And mine got at some point throughout the time I was there, that got clogged, and so it backed up into my basement and totally
Oh,
flooded my house,
that's
flooded the basement of my house. Yeah. So the personal attacks, the flooding. I went through a really bad breakup 1 month. I was pushed off of a project team that I had started, and it was a brand new like briefing team that Philadelphia had never had before. So I was trying to build up like the prestige of it and turn it into like a legitimate program. Like I printed and binded a book every week for the briefing and, got that out to all the leadership. And
mm.
I took it very seriously. And I think
Wow.
the other people on the project they had so much other stuff going on. They didn't want to take it that seriously. So I was accidentally kicked off the team in one of the meetings. And all the other briefers were like, "You can't kick her. You can't cut that part of the program because that's the entire program that Amanda does. And she basically does the whole project. So
Wow.
if you kick out this portion of the project, it's never going to happen."
Mm.
And I just sat there and I was like, well, at least somebody said it. But thank
Yeah.
So it was one of those days I was like, cool. So I got a phone call. My grandma's got cancer. My mom's having a mental breakdown about it. I'm getting fired off the team I started. And then the next day I got broken up with. And I just was like, this can't be real. Like, don't get me wrong. I think all of us have had moments in our lives and in our careers where we think something bad is happening, or like you think, oh, this just is a rough day at the office. This is just a bad week. It's a bad month. Like I'm in a funk. Something's weird. But like for me, the professional things that were being said to me, the teams I was being excluded from, the opportunities that I would volunteer to do, and I'd be one of the only people in the office that would volunteer to do them, and I would get denied, or like the funding would get cut randomly or in an unexplained way. And then all the personal things that were happening on the outside. So like living in a place where I had no support system, limited
Mm.
friendship, you start to internalize a lot and you start to really like start listening to yourself and you start going, okay, we're going to have all these uncomfortable conversations. Like, are we really happy? Is this really what we want? Is this really what we were meant to do? Because yes, you're going to have bad days at work. Like I have a pretty normal 9 to 5 now, and like not every day I have is great, but I don't wake up hating it the way that I started to do in that career. And that hurt me the most
Mhm.
because I didn't realize that I was grieving my identity, right? Like I thought grief was pretty typical to, oh, someone dies, or a breakup happens, or you lose a friendship or something. But losing yourself is a separate whole separate level of grief that I've never had in my entire life. And now I have so much more empathy for other people that are still dealing with grief, no matter what form it takes, because it's something that like you can't fathom until it actually happens to you.
Yeah.
So
There's so much I want to respond to in your story. First of all, I
yeah,
know so much about the government. I feel so ignorant. The fact
no, no, no.
that's amazing. Secondly, what is like a persistent theme across your story is your own persistence, your own like service-oriented heart, your own beautiful way that you kept looking at the world around you, like, how can I help? What can I do? How can I make this world a better place? No matter if it was thinking about the VA or the FBI or whatever it was. And I think that's just such a beautiful character person trait about you. But
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, but I think what you were just now speaking to about the self-loss and not realizing that was like a thing is such an important point to make because I think you're right. We're taught that it's the loss potentially of something external to us, something physical, another person, maybe not physical like a house could be, but or a person. But I
Yeah.
think underneath what you're speaking to is your relationship with yourself and exactly what you said, your self-concept, your identity.
Yeah, no, and I don't know if your guests cry on your episode. I'm gonna try not to, but I sometimes cry on mine because I'm pretty raw on my episodes, especially the earlier ones.
Yeah.
She is, she's angry and she's frustrated and she's just tired, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Ooh, so tired. But I had to let go of who I thought I was going to become,
yeah,
let go of the future that I thought I was going to build. I had to let go of the future version of who I thought I was supposed to be.
absolutely.
And like that was the version that I had put up on the pedestal. That was the version I was always trying to reach for. That was the version that like I told everybody I was going to be. And so for me, I've mentioned this a few times on my show, and I should probably explore it in therapy. But one of my biggest fears, really, and still is internally, is that I don't want to be a disappointment. I'm always afraid I'm going to disappoint people. And so by choosing to leave this super cool career, because like on paper, like every time I'd go home, my parents were always bragging, my daughter works for the FBI. I'm like, you guys got to have to stop telling people that that's what this is.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to tell them, really, my own safety. So my brother actually, I've never told this on my show, but my brother has a joke that he tried to say that once. He came to visit me when I was still working at headquarters, and he and his friends came up for a spring break trip, and they were going out at the bars, and they were like, don't mess with me. My sister's, she's, jacked. She works for the FBI. Like, don't, you better give me whatever I want or whatever, belligerent, silly, 20-year-old.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, dude, you've got to stop telling people that I work for the FBI for safety. And he's like, fine. She works for the post office. If you want presents, you better be nice to us. Don't fight her. Don't bother her, or else you're never going to get a letter
Oh
from
my
Santa
God.
ever again.
That is hilarious.
Like, it's so dumb. But for the rest of his college career and all of his friends from then on, if they ever met me, they always ask about how's the post office? Like, are you still enjoying working at the post office? And I'm like, I can't tell if you're serious, or, like what he told you, or if you're joking now.
Code. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one of those things, right? So like, I
Yeah.
guess subconsciously I
Yeah.
internalized they're proud of me because I did this,
Yes.
not,
Yeah.
oh, not because of me.
Yes. 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 And you are so not alone in that. And I honestly really feel like this era or generation or these few generations is really the rise of feminine intelligence, the rise of the healing into our paradigm, which is historically, culturally built on, you know, patriarchy and other, you go into that as well, like majority culture. And a lot of, not saying that either is wrong or right or good or bad, but a lot of the emphasis is exactly what you're saying is what do I do? How do I contribute? How can you measure me? How can you define me? How can you label me? And I think what is important about these spaces is that we bring back a remembrance to also who we are, our essence, our lived experience, our connection, our creativity. And from that becomes the byproducts of whatever it is we do, the beautiful
Right.
podcasts you host, the conversations, the enlightenment. And that is a secondary outcome. But the one in the center is the essence of who you are. And I just want to acknowledge your contribution to helping other people also have that inner validation, that inner healing that is so necessary and needed if we're going to change the paradigm of how we raise our children, how we are in community, how we are in collaborations, what our society values. And I'm actually really glad you even brought up anger, the early versions of yourself on the podcast, because I think also as women, and maybe this isn't true for everyone, I don't want to generalize, but in the same way that maybe we have unconscious inherited beliefs about our worth being directly tied to our value of like what
Which
our contributors, our
bad thing.
tangibles.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the other part of that is like being a good girl, a good woman is suppressing our anger and our emotions. And I just want to reflect back to you the way that you were able to honor your rage as like sacred rage in a way that's not a fire like that's gonna burn the whole place down. Or if it does, it's like fertilizing the soil. It's with intention. It's with like something greater than you, which is what you're doing now. You're recreating your life. You're bringing people with you. You're providing healing space. You're innovating. Like it's rage is not good or bad, but how do we use it? How are we taught to be fearful of it? And I just want to say what a beautiful example that you were able to embrace it, express it with like something greater than you, which I think is why I could notice at the beginning your heart is so beautiful and service oriented. And of course, it makes sense you would use your rage in the same way.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely. I think the biggest reason I started the show was I say it on the first couple of episodes, but it was initially selfish, right? It was centered on me because I had never been through therapy before and I had never really talked about what I had done at my work, and I can't legally necessarily, so I can't fully describe that for your listeners, but um I had never had an outlet because while I was working there, you weren't supposed to have a public facing profile. Like you could have social media, but they always needed to be private. We would go through trainings about how to not get got on the internet. And I just kept so much internal. And especially during 2020 when there were riots and police issues and civil rights issues and hate crimes and all these kinds of things that were going on. And the FBI was, involved because of needing to protect crime on law enforcement, but also racial-based crime and hate crime and things like that. And especially in Philadelphia, it got pretty scary. And so there would be times where we would do our family our family Zoom calls where everybody, because nobody could hang out anymore or do all the holidays, so we would just get online like on Sunday nights and talk. And I had to stop going to them because they would get really political and a little sideways and haywiry. And I would kind of get caught in the middle of the left arguments and the right arguments, but both of them would be dismissive of me because I was part of the problem.
Mm.
And I was the only person. We have lawyers in our family, and we have obviously my father as the entrepreneur who's worked with veterans, but we didn't have anybody that had actually been law enforcement or military police or anything kind of like that before. And so I had to kind of keep my mouth shut. And I think it, when the floodgates finally opened, the podcast gave me the outlet to go, this is what I've been holding down for so long, and it's going to come out, and it's not going to be pretty. It won't be polished. It may not be exciting to listen to, but it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that if I had been the like 28 to 32-year-old version of me, if I had been listening to that podcast while I was going to work, it's entirely possible that if I had had that voice in my head, I may not have quit yet. I may
Mm-hmm.
have given it a little more time, or I may have tried something different versus just fully leaving. I know now that leaving was the right decision, but I didn't have anyone that I could listen to. And so I just thought, you know what, if I can't find the community that's really talking about what I want to talk about, I have to do it myself.
Yeah.
If I don't want to lose myself to that anger even further, or that
Yeah.
frustration, or that the same problem, right? Like the definition of insanity, you keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, like
Yeah.
depressing how I was feeling and not being my full self
Mm.
enabled that identity to have a crack and start to fall apart. And it
Yeah.
enabled the creative side of me to be suppressed. And
Mm.
turns out maybe the creative side actually is the one that will have a better shot of helping people feel free. Because I admired the Bureau. They have great marketing, or at least they did when I was working there. The era when I was working there and got hired there. But like the original mission is, to uphold the Constitution of the United States and to protect the American people. And to me, that was the be all end all, right? That was my civilian version of joining the service. And that's it. The government, in my opinion, should do that. Anything else beyond that, we can talk about. That's a separate podcast show, I'm sure. But to me, that is the whole purpose of your federal rights and your civil rights needing to be protected. Because if we uphold the Constitution and protect the American people, they get to live their lives in freedom. They get to open the businesses they want to open. They get to send their kids to the schools they want to go to. They get to live a life where they feel safe and they can pursue what they want to pursue. And that means from protecting them from everything, the cybersecurity issues, counterintelligence problems, espionage, spies, violent crime. I worked crimes against children and human trafficking, and things like that also are included, domestic terrorism as well. All of these are infringements on your ability to just exist
Mm-hmm.
and be. And so I thought that was the calling. That made the most sense to young version of me. And now that I've been through the podcast and I've talked myself through a lot of the episodes, and I treat it a lot like a diary. So for anybody that's interested in listening to that, it's the solo episodes are very diary-esque, and the guest episodes are very similar to what Saidie does here, where I try and interview other experts that can help me feel less lost in the world. And hopefully anybody listening can learn something from the found people. Together, right? In parallel.
Yeah.
It's my real journey of rebuilding my life in my 30s as a millennial that's been told you were supposed to do all this stuff. And it's like, well, I tried to do the stuff and the stuff didn't want me to do it. So it didn't work out. So now I got to find new stuff. And it's been fun. It's been painful. It's been probably the best thing I've ever done for myself, actually.
I mean, there's so much I want to respond to. I'm trying to hold them in both in my mind. The first is you alluded a couple times to the realness of it, whether it's like it's messy, it's whatever, but it's real. And then another time, like this is my diary. But I just want to acknowledge that I think that's even more powerful. It's the frequency of authenticity is the most powerful frequency because it is real. And so just to thank you for the courage that it takes to be the full messy version, which allows others to be their full messy version too. And I think
Yeah.
at the heart of what you're speaking to, saying this version of my life, I was more led in this way, my creative was suppressed. Now this version of my life, my creative is more forward. But I think regardless of the season, your past, your present, your future, how can we continue to honor the self-expression that is within? And I think it's so beautifully ironic and synchronistic that your definition of what the government should do is just allow people to be fully free.
Yeah.
And Amanda, what you're doing is actively creating your life from full freedom, from your fullest expression, from your fullest desire to wander when you want to wander and to be when you want to be and to do when you want to do. And I think that I try in this space to continue to bring it back to our own agency and our own power, despite the circumstances around us. And I think that last line of what you had just said, and it's escaping me the exact way that you said it, that you are in the season of your choosing. I mean, to me, that is how we release power in the world is by choice. And the only one who can give that to ourselves is ourselves, or give it away to others is ourselves. And I wanted to reflect back to your journey from the macro to the micro what a beautiful journey.
It is. It is. And I do want to iterate. I probably should have said this at the top, but just because my path did not work out in that particular career does not mean that it's not still a worthwhile path and it's not still a good place for other people. I still have friends that work there. I still know agents and analysts and support staff that work there, and they were the friends in it and the relationships I have been able to maintain are loving, supportive people. And anytime I've ever doubted, should I have really done that? Should I have really left? And they're like, are you kidding me? Get out the door. Here's your boxes. We'll help you pack. You do what you need to do. Because clearly I had several managers that, were really kind and super supportive. And it really sucked that they would be undermined sometimes for working with me or for trying to help me. And it was clear that just something wasn't working. And just because it didn't work for me does not mean that it's a bad place or that no one should go there ever again, or nobody should apply, or nobody should try to be there or stay there if they are still there. It just, I guess, for whatever reason, the universe started to show me what my future would look like if I chose to stay. And
Yeah.
I did not want to choose to stay in a position where, yeah, I might have stayed for the 20, 25 years. I'd get my pension. I'd be in my 40s, early 50s by that point. I could have a second career if I wanted to as a
Right.
security consultant. Like I would be set up, but at the expense of not having that creative freedom, not having the analysis that I was writing and producing being trusted or being used ethically, at the risk of not potentially never being married, never having kids, like because I would be working all the time, or have the opportunity for international positions, and it's really hard to do that with family or with kids. So what life would I have? I thought before I left, I had to really get internal and think about what life would I want. The one
Yeah.
that is totally uncertain and I have no idea what's really going to happen, but I know that because I tried it, when I die, I'll be happy because I
Yeah.
tried it. Or I get the guaranteed one because it's super cool and in theory, I'll be able to retire with all these benefits, but who am I going to share the benefits with?
Yeah, and that's what I hear when I hear you speak. I don't hear like I have no judgments about your colleagues or your environment. What I hear is
Yeah.
as a woman who is in a phase of self-discovery, of being honest with her heart, with herself, with how she wants to show up in the world and contribute. That's the journey that I hear, and a lot
Yeah.
of courage because it's exactly like you said, we're inherently unconsciously taught that these things outside of us will lead to our safety or to our validation or to our success or whatever measure or marker you're aiming for. And what I hear from you is like, is it called a homecoming? What do they call those stories when like the young heroine like finds themselves or hero?
Right. Or the Odyssey, right? The journey, the hero's journey.
Yeah, the hero's journey, the heroine's journey, the Odyssey, but
Oh yeah, something like that. Yeah.
yeah, coming of age, maybe? That's like when you see a youngster in a movie, not that you're like, I don't want to be
Yeah.
demeaning your
Oh
age
no
or
no
your
no no no
journey.
no no. Well,
But that
it's
sentiment.
possible because I mean maybe like I don't know if your show gets into like astrology stuff or not. I don't know anything. I know I'm a Capricorn. That's it. But
Thanks.
I don't know anything about what that means. Like don't ask me. But I have heard a lot of people talk about like your 27 to 32 range is like your Saturn return period or something like that. And
Yeah.
little did I know the things that were truly happening to me between 27 to 32 were just absolute nonsense. Like,
Yeah.
and when I finally heard more about that process, I
Yeah.
was
It
like,
resonated.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Because I don't really think the 2025 was probably the first time I had really started listening and could hear my intuitive voice,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
heard it the week I started the show because
Mm.
it told me, you have to do something or else you're the self. It called it you, but it was
Hmm.
not in a suicidal way, but it's like you have to do something or you're going to die. Like
Hmm.
the entity of you will be dead. And I was just like, okay, all right, we've got all the software, we've got the stuff, we're just gonna start talking and see what happens. And
Yeah.
2.5 years later, here we are. But
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I hear and when I see when you talk. It's like it's a homecoming to yourself.
right.
Yeah,
So
which is
quite
beautiful.
possibly, yeah. I wasn't listening to anybody or anything. I thought I knew exactly what I wanted and what path was going to work, and I took it. And I did not, I did not have a homecoming until the 30s hit, and you're like, oh,
Girl, wait
yeah,
till 35 to 45.
yeah. I'm sure it's. Well, yeah. I turned 35 in January, so it's getting so much better. And I used to think that that was such a silly thing that people would say too, like, "Oh, your 20s are so, you used to think those are the time of your life, and actually
Right.
they're the most tumultuous because you're changing careers, you're trying to figure out who you really are and what you want and how
Yeah.
to pay your bills for the first time and how
Yeah.
to, get into romantic relationships or not if that's what you want, in and out of all of those things too and navigate where you want to go. But like your 30s has so much knowledge in it and the confidence to start saying yes to things and no
Yeah.
to things.
Yeah.
That helped me build so much confidence too. And so in 2025, I think I really started to get into the groove of even finally admitting that I'm a podcaster. Like
Yeah.
I would go to events, yeah, even at, 30 episodes in or something, like not that far along, and my dad would hear me introduce myself to people or things like that. And he's like, "She's also a podcaster." And I'm like, "Dad, no, like don't." It's so counterintuitive because you want to tell people about your show, you want to tell people about the content you're creating, but like I still felt the imposter syndrome. So like
Of course.
this year, because of all that confidence building in 2025 and like readjusting a little bit the finances to start trying to pay and boost the show and like really, get actual graphics, get an actual website up, get an actual digital footprint going, I was like, I am this. Like if you
Yeah.
type in my name, Amanda Powers podcaster into Google, it pulls up all of my channels and I don't know. That sounds kind of cliche to like Google yourself, but
No.
I've never been able to Google myself before, and now I'm real. Now I'm on the internet. So it's one of those where like 2026, I'm finally actually saying, yes, I work in marketing and podcasting, or
Yeah.
I'm in marketing sales and I do
Yeah.
podcasts.
I
Or,
love that. Yeah. And I think like a lot of people resonate to that too, who are in the in between when you don't yet feel like the future you're living into is you, but you
right,
definitely don't feel like the past is you. And how much like internal work that speaks to have your own back, to be proud of yourself, even when you don't have the external like real manifestations, like physical proof,
yeah,
like
yeah,
to still believe and to still love yourself through it, no matter what it looks like. That takes an incredible amount of self-trust and belief.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still working on it every day. I For anybody that hasn't listened to the show before or you haven't listened to any of the recent episodes, depending on what time your show comes out, January and February of 2026, those episodes were really spread out and kind of short and little rough cut because I just didn't have the time. Like I work full time somewhere else right now at the time of this recording, and I do all the podcasting edits and clips and uploading all myself. And I'm also a primary caretaker with my mom and my grandmother. And so it's one of those where, like, the last couple of weeks, just I haven't had the time. And so a little piece of the identity felt wrong because it's like, ooh, you gave up doing your weekly episodes, or you stopped showing up the way the other shows that you admire are showing up. And it's that constant reminder that number one, you stop comparing yourself to somebody else. Their journey is their journey, yours is yours. But number two, what does their reality look like? Because their version of 24 hours in a day is a very different 24 hours than yours. What does it actually look like? Where are you spending your time versus where do they have blocks of time where they can either do these things or they have a team that helps them? They have a producer, they have an editor, they have a social media manager, something like that. And then I'm like, oh, right.
Yeah,
I have
that's
none of that. So it
passion.
makes
Yeah.
sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense to break it
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I
unintentionally.
think too, even like you just having that thought, because I also like really value emotional intelligence in this space and always share the framework that emotions are not good or bad. They're just information. So like even that thought that you had of like, oh, look, you didn't show up weekly. Like that's just information of what you still value, which is your platform, your podcast, your mission. Like nothing has gone wrong. That's just your life talking back to you and
Right.
redirecting you, recalibrating you. Like, yeah, that's isn't that how it always is, though? Life is always talking back to us, for better or worse.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
I follow a few different fitness influencers as well on Instagram and stuff, and one of the ones I admire the most, her name is Danielle Wilson. She's based out of Chicago, and I've admired her journey a lot because she is pretty open about a couple years back, she found out she had PCOS, but she didn't really realize what it was at first. So she would fluctuate in her weight and people would judge her. So she would make videos about that and trying to explain, like, I'm almost 6 feet tall. My father was a football player. Like, I'm just a super strong athlete and always have been. I was a cheerleader and a gymnast. So like I'm built closer to like the aerodynamics of that. Like, uh,
Yeah.
and like I have hormonal issues, like birth control doesn't work for me. So like
Mm.
she also talked about like, being a Black woman in the healthcare industry and like not feeling heard when she needed help. So she was like, I'll take you on my neuropath or naturopath, I don't know,
Mhm.
but I don't
Naturopathic
you're
journey. Yeah, yeah.
naturopathic journey. So she's like, if you need an alternative doctor, this is how
Mm.
to speak up for yourself when you have questions. These are the questions you should ask if you are feeling like I felt, and like get your blood drawn, get all these things. So she's just constantly been an advocate for show up in your season because the seasons are always going to change. But what doesn't have to change is you. You show up in whatever level you're able to show up in, but never stop showing up. Right.
Yeah.
And so every single time that she goes through something and like she's doing great now, she launched her own app, like not me bragging about a woman I've never met before, but like, or I met her once at an event, a panel, but one of those things where just like I can see someone from afar and go, I admire how much that they are truly being honest about who they are and about what's really happening in their life that's specific to them. And that's how they built the community. That's how she
Right.
grew her following because she
Yeah.
she taught people to show up in their seasons
Yeah.
and no matter what that season looks like, if you're slower or if
Right.
you're faster or if you're producing multiple episodes a month or if you're only doing
Right.
one every other week, who
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also like, even to use your example of like, you are, okay, yes, so podcasting is one thing that you show up to in your community, but also you're showing up to your mom, to your grandmother, to this 9 to 5 job, to all these other things that reflect the values of who you are and what you stand for, that only complement what you're trying to do in this identity reconstruction space, you know?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the name of your podcast, Lost and Found. And I was wondering, I mean, I think, yeah, I know you're probably early in your journey, but I wonder, there must have been some sense of, you tell me, relief or recalibration, or tell us about the being found part and what your beliefs are. Are we ever truly found?
Oh, good. Good question. I think when I initially started the show, and this is very common for any of you that either are considering starting a podcast or listen to shows and you wonder why they rebranded, it's not uncommon to start out in one direction for a podcast and then realize that your listenership has changed. And so you want to honor what that listenership is resonating with. And so if you are going through a season as the host and you're moving in a different direction, you rebrand the show. So initially the show was called What Now? A Podcast for the Lost and Found. And my at the time my booking agent was like, it's just a little too long. Like it's a lot to say. Um, but the What Now name had already been taken by Trevor Noah the month before. And so it was like, what now with Trevor Noah? And I'm like, well, I can't do that because he's using it. And I can't do just the Lost and Found or Lost and Found because that had already been used. So mostly I was trying to hold true to who does the show serve. I'm always asking what now because that's that's the crux of the interview questions, what were your what now moments and how did you pivot from them? But the core groups of the audience are people who are lost, who are struggling, who might be millennials like me, women who are questioning themselves, or a person that's not feeling empowered to make the change in their life, or things are just constantly going wrong like they were in mine, and you don't know why. And you're trying to figure out like what direction am I supposed to take this in? And the found aspect is like the missing piece. There was no bridge between me and the people I was listening to figure out who I am and who I want to become. And so I wanted to try and provide a space where that could happen relatively easily. So the term lost and found is represented by the people that are involved in the show, the listener group, and the specialists or the people that are helping us get to that place. But I don't know that I necessarily feel found. I think that people can feel fulfilled in their purpose in life, and you can be called to a specific purpose in life, and that helps you feel aligned with just whatever's going on, kind of like sometimes when some people say, like, yeah, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. That I wanted to try and figure out how can I do what I love where I don't work ever again, but it's work that I enjoy doing. How do I feel purposeful again? Because I had lost it by leaving the bureau, by letting, intelligence analyst Amanda go.
Hmm.
That wasn't my purpose. I wasn't supposed to serve people in that way. Then how am I supposed to serve them? How am I supposed to bring about meaning in the world? Because
Hmm.
I know sometimes you've talked about the opposite crux, where it's kind of like as well on your show and on your socials, like what if just existing is your purpose? What if just being here already is enough of the validation? And you said that as I was talking to you before we started recording, that like I was listening to you in the hotel. Um, you even said that on your show. You're like, and some of you might hear that statement and go, I hate that. That's not enough. And I immediately was like, that's me. I hate that. That's not real. I need more than that, Saidie. And maybe some people do. Maybe some people are completely okay with being exactly where they are with what they have. And I think that is a level of happiness and just being content that all of us should be striving for, but we shouldn't put people down who are the ones that are still trying to get there. They might need to try a lot of stuff before they figure out what they really like and what they really love and what they're good at, and what if there's an overlap in the Venn diagram of I really enjoy doing it. It's more than just it started as a hobby, but I want to make money off of it and I want to share it with the world. Like if there's a way to get inside that middle piece of that Venn diagram, like that's kind of the goal, really. So the ultimate plan, really, the way I envision the Lost and Found podcast as a brand, and an entity as a whole, would be I'd want to do the show. I'd want to do live events as well, or live podcast episodes where I could interview actual wanderers. They could come up and do a live Q&A with me kind of thing. Or the ultimate thing would be to do like a wanderer conference. So like a lost and
Cool.
found conference where I know that like there's lots of like motivational retreats and spas and things like that where people host panels, but like I would want it to be fully interactive. So like you'd come into the conference and there's keynote speakers and panel breakout rooms for the events, but there'd also be an area for content creation. So if you wanted to come in and you wanted to make content about your journey, you could do that in that room. Or there is a podcast room if you wanted to interview each other, things like that. But it would be very interactive. There'd be the the physical aspect, the mental aspect, and the emotional aspects. It would be a 3-day event for the Lost and Found. So you'd get treatments or listen to people that can help you in each of those things on your path on the panels. And so the fitness one would have all the people I'd really admire, and they would lead a workout during that day. If you wanted to go and do a yoga session or do a body weight hit training kind of thing, or you could go to the emotional group and it would mostly be panelists of like neuroscientists and psychologists and therapists or relationship experts that could talk to you about like how managing your emotions, building up your emotional intelligence. How do you do that in order to understand yourself and connect to your intuition? And then the mental health group could be more like, the optimism training and how you speak to yourself matters, and how to use your words to help propel yourself forward rather than sitting in the negative. Or like, if I have depression and anxiety or ADHD, how do I reconcile what's feeling lost and like stuck in my life versus, oh, it's just a mental health thing, it's a neurological thing that's going on with me. Like if I get that addressed, maybe I won't be in my own way anymore. Like different things like that. So that's kind of
Yeah.
that's the ultimate vision, is that it would move much further beyond the podcast in and of itself, but the Lost and Found community would be um, some kind of annual event where I could host that and all the wanderers can be together and interact, and you'd get different panelists every year and different things, but you address it from all different directions because your well-being is so much more than just your mental health. It's your physical health, your emotional health, your professional planning, right? If you want to plan your career up to a certain extent, if you're one of those people like I used to be, like having a 5-year plan might be super important to you, and that's fine, but like let's help you get all the tools into your toolbox before you like run off and try and build something or do something, like it's just
Yeah.
want to
That's
enable
beautiful.
enable people to feel free and authentically themselves and not be ashamed of
Mm.
struggling with transitional life periods,
Yeah.
not having the answers was so terrifying to the old me, right?
Yeah.
That job,
Yes.
that job required me to have a lot of answers for a lot
Yeah.
of gaps in very violent and very unfortunate situations, and so not having answers was a difficult thing to reconcile in that old life. And so in this life now, not having the answers actually opens so many more doors for me because now I get to meet people like you and I get to talk to people that have the answers and I get to share that information on my platform because kind of we were talking before the recording that like to a certain extent when I first started this everybody else was a major guru or if they were talking about mindset and change they were so far beyond struggling anymore. They weren't actively living in a transitional moment. At least if they were, they're not sharing it publicly. And so I
Mm.
really wanted to be able to be like, I am one of you because I started this because I am one of you. If that makes
Yeah.
that makes any
Yeah. I think that's such a beautiful vision. And honestly, girl, I hear you talk, I feel like you're a lot more found than you might think you are. Like, not only
sense.
because it's everything you know you don't want to do, but also this beautiful acceptance of exactly where you are of exploration, and then a trajectory of I know where I want to get to. Like, I think
Yeah.
I think it's yeah, beautiful, exactly as it is. And I think you have a lot of clarity in how you express yourself and how you're experiencing your life.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's as I'm sure you know, and you've talked with your own clients, it's so hard to self-reflect sometimes because you see yourself every day. You're looking in the mirror every day. You don't notice the changes that are happening to you over time because you have to look at it constantly. But for somebody else to be the outside observer, it is validating to go, okay, that's nice that is real. That's actually happening. The trajectory is slowly going in this way. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. It's very sweet of you to offer that and to
It's
say that.
not sweet. It's the truth. It's how you come across. It's how I hear you. It's how I see you. Uh, know who you are, and you're being fully authentically you, which I think was the goal in the first place. And
Yes. Yeah, to get
it's yeah. So it's like all these outward things just get to be the fun part of it now. Of how do you express that authenticity through the podcast, through the conference planning, through the whatever else your creative wants to lead.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love how you a couple times now have referred to your past self and even thinking towards your future self. And I just want to allow for any advice to come through if a listener is listening to you, resonates with your story of like, oh, I'm in a situation that is no longer feeling aligned. I'm scared to start because
Yeah.
safety, ambiguity, etc. And you had said it earlier in the beginning, oh, that 28-year-old version of self, she didn't know it back then, but she was already living parts of the story. But either what would you tell yourself, or what would you tell a listener that is now where you once were?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think when I think back on the younger me, if I can talk to her kind of situation, I would say like if you have a dream right now that you enjoy, a path you really want to try that you think is gonna be it, then you owe it to yourself to do it, like go full force, like what I did, truly kept just reapplying and applying and applying until I could get in. Like it worked out. I got what I wanted. There's I don't know if you saw on my Instagram or not, but there's a photo of me at 11 years old, and my dad still has the journal. He gave me that scanned page when I graduated from the academy, and in it was my journal entry of like, my mom and daddy took me to DC, and we saw the FBI building today, and it was so cool, and I pointed at it, and I told my dad, I'm going to come back and work here. And like,
Wow.
I don't remember writing that journal entry at all. But my mom, when we were growing up, if we went on trips, she made my brother and I like do homework and we'd have to write a journal entry every day of the trip so we could remember what we did. And they kept it. And there's a photo of me of just wearing my little like beanie and I'm pointing up at the J. Edgar Hoover sign. And it's one of those where 28-year-old me thought she knew what she wanted and was going to go after it. I would tell her, then you have to do it. You have to do full force, what is it? Kids say 10 toes down on business or whatever. Like, I'm not cool. I wish I was, but
I'm older than
right.
you, so I don't even
I don't know. I was like, yeah, 10 toes down, staying on biz. Whatever. If you're gonna do it. Like follow through. Don't if that's what you truly want, you need to follow through and give it a shot. But don't be alarmed if it pivots, if the path diverges, if it starts to shift under you, because you can't control everything, but you're going to regret it more than anything not trying.
Hmm.
Even if you change later, it's the not trying at all that you're going to regret. But if I could go back and speak to, the initial podcaster, most of that was like, this is going to be really, really hard. This is a very different thing than you've ever done before. You're doing a fully independent project like this. You haven't done anything really that creative since you were a little kid or in high school, maybe. And it's actually a really amazing opportunity because now you get to bring that like 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old girl alive again. And you actually get to enjoy it this time
Mm.
because now you're actually being creative. Now you're actually letting her be heard. Now you're actually listening to her ideas and designing something or trying something that she wanted to possibly do that you never let her do before. So I think that's really the weird transitional thing that happens to people sometimes in their 30s, is that the version of you that you told was never allowed to exist or couldn't exist because it either didn't fit in or it wasn't true or it wasn't enough, whatever the reasons were. Give them a shot, right? Like give them a chance to exist again and actually enjoy being that version of yourself this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
suppressed it so much last time.
Yeah.
So there's two different versions of Amanda in those instances. And I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that would really be the advice that like I don't think I could ever tell a listener not to try a path. But if you're gonna do it, you can't half-ass it. You got to go full force into whatever it is you believe in, but don't be surprised if it shifts because something always shifts.
Yeah. I love that. It's beautiful. Yeah. You're gonna go in on your dreams, on yourself, have your
Yeah.
back to believe in yourself and do it. And to hold space for the unfolding, for the beautiful things we couldn't have planned, the plot twists and detours that hopefully, probably
Yeah, yeah,
lead
yeah.
to something far greater if we allow it to, if we choose for it to. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I think the other part of a lot of your story is also your meaning making. Your ability to sit, process, grieve, whatever it is that you need to do. But the way I hear you reflect on it is with a sense of gratitude, is with a sense of awe, is with a sense of like being proud of yourself. And I don't think that happens by accident. We have a negativity bias. Like it takes someone with intentionality and with meaning to look at their life and like reconcile with it when the times that they need to, or, to use their life as a relationship with themselves in a beautiful way. So I just want to also reflect that to you. That like that didn't just happen to you. Amanda chose to do that, Amanda is really
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I think you're totally right.
Is there anything else you would like to share with anyone listening?
My gosh. Oh, well, just thank you again for inviting me on the show. I feel like every time I get to talk to somebody new in this space, it opens up even more. And I appreciate you allowing me to share my story here with your audience as well. And I guess for anybody that's out there that's really starting to doubt themselves or starting to doubt their purpose or their meaning, or you're losing sight of whatever's going on, whether that's your career, your relationships, your outlook on your future, it's always going to be terrifying, but I think choosing yourself isn't inherently selfish, because if you don't really feed into you and you don't allow yourself to grow, there's really no way for you to be your best in whatever situation you're trying to put yourself in. And losing yourself is bad, but forcing yourself into a box or into a skin or a version of who you think you're supposed to be is going to kill that self even faster. And I don't wish self-loss on anyone ever.
Yes.
It was one of the most terrifying and still is things that I've ever done or ever felt. And so I wouldn't be so hard on yourself if you need to choose yourself, if you need to pivot and make a different decision that finally allows you to be authentic to what you really want, because that's the only way to get what you want.
Yeah, I think that was so beautiful, and it honestly really does bring it like full circle. And there's so much we could say about going back to what is a good girl and the
Yeah.
definitions of like being selfish and what does that even mean, and caring for yourself, loving yourself, speaking up, having pleasure. Ugh, for goodness sake, like there's so
Right.
much
Yeah.
there that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have unconsciously inherited, and how much does that influence the self-betrayal, the self-denial, the self-abandonment, which exactly as you're saying further perpetuates the self-loss. And I meant to say this earlier when you were talking about self-loss. I think in some situations it's so obvious, but I do want to also hold space and acknowledge those women out there who it just sort of slowly erodes, like in the smallest ways, the smallest negotiations, the little bits of like, oh, I'll do that later. Let me put my child first, my grandmother first, my career planning first, and how over time that disconnection also is another form of self-loss.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I think I'm gonna butcher this name and I really apologize, but Dr. Sarah Kubrick is she's known as the millennial therapist online on Instagram. And she was my first intro into the self-loss community. And I read her book called It's On Me. And she opens that journey with her identity crisis. And she has like a panic attack on an airplane. And she's starting to realize, that I'm going home to a life. I'm leaving this meeting I had and I'm going home to a life that like it's not mine. I'm engaged. I'm, really young. I don't even know if I actually like this plan or I want this career or I want this relationship. And like all of it starts compounding on her. But it started because somebody asked the simple question, like, are you happy?
Mm,
And her immediate answer in her head was no. And then that just spiraled everywhere because you're like, what do you mean it's no? Like you've done everything. Like you've
right,
survived genocide over in Eastern Europe. You made it here. You got your PhD. Like you're already engaged. Like what are you talking about? You're not happy. And
right.
it goes from there. And so when I was reading that initial opening in the book, I was like, oh my God. Like I didn't have a panic attack on an airplane, but like she explained it exactly like that as an expert in existential psychology. Like it's self-loss isn't necessarily a divisive moment because she
Mhm.
had lots of tragedy that should have thrown her off her path as a child and growing up and stuff, but it never did. It was the slow build of each thing over time and the constant saying no to certain situations or just agreeing with your partner for the sake of avoiding a fight or a conversation you don't want to have or waking up one day and not I guess she talked about one of the examples she had was is it in The Runaway Bride where they asked Julia Roberts like how do you like your eggs and she doesn't know the answer because
Right,
every person she's been with had eggs a different way and so the guy is like okay but how do you want them and she didn't know and I think
right.
those were like the day that you realize that you are gone and you're just here
Hmm.
one of the most terrifying days that you're ever going to wake up to, but it's also I think one of the most important ones in your life. Should you continue to be lucky and have a long one, because that's your moment. That is the literal fork in the road situation. Do I go this way? Do I stay exactly where I am, or do I try this whole other option? And if you are able to and can and have the courage to try the other option, I would say try it because I hate the feeling of the stagnation and being stuck and
Yeah.
I would never want to do that. So I don't know if you do a book club as part of your podcast episodes or anything, but I feel like your listeners would have so much fun being able to comment on like this is what we learned from this particular speaker or something like that or this author because there's another one that you keep talking about like the what women have been taught to like feel
Mm.
shameful about or what they're supposed to hide about. Like there's another book again I'm going to butcher this because I can't remember the author but it was like the seven deadly sins and how did
Oh,
the history behind the seven deadly sins and where did they come from and how those seven deadly sins were used to control women
yeah.
so that one I found the author was on an episode of Girls Gotta Eat podcast and the interview was just absolutely fascinating about how women's bodies and opinions and minds and capabilities have been controlled based on these seven allegedly horrible things it is to be gluttonous or shameful or adulterous or anger and envy and all that kind of sloth. And it's just kind of like you can't win ever. So
Yeah.
might as well be yourself. But those two books I think would resonate well with your audience. Sadie will put it in your show notes, guys. I promise. There'll be good recommendations if you're feeling if you're relating at all to anything I'm saying. Those were two books that really helped me feel just validated in the fact that I was trying something that was super outside of my comfort zone, and it helped me understand why I felt so outside of my comfort zone.
Elise Lonen. I don't know if I'm saying her last name right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It looks like a garden on the front. It's
Yeah.
very colorful. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you'd like that one a lot.
That's awesome. Thank you for the recommendations.
Sure.
Well, Amanda, how can people reach out to you? How can they work with you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything I have is under the show in and of itself is called the Lost and Found Podcast with Amanda Powers, and that's on all platforms. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, just like Sadie here. And my website is podcastforthelost.com. And all of the social medias are podcast for the lost as well, just with the periods in between each word. So podcast.for.the.lost. But that's where I am. The website has a contact page where you can submit listener questions, or if you're interested in sponsorships or things like that for the show, you can fill those out. If you are interested in being a guest on the show, you can fill out a form there as well, or inviting me to your show if you have one and you think I'd be a good fit and resonate with your audience. All of that is on there for that contact form. So that's probably the best way to go about it.
Amazing. And what if someone wants to help you with one of these conferences? They know a space, they want to help you book it.
Absolutely. No, that would be perfect. I would reach out directly to hello@podcastforthelost.com. That email I track every day, and that's how I keep everything up to date.
Beautiful. Thank you, Amanda. It's been such a pleasure to know you actually and sit with you.
I know, we're friends now. Yeah, hello.
Oh, yes, yeah. Thank you for sharing your authenticity, your story, your heart, your journey, and all that you have, the beautiful work that you have not only given to yourself, but to your community and created a community around it. So thank you. Thank you for all that you do.
Oh, at any time. And the sign off I always use is wanderers are always welcome. So it's an open space for anybody that's, just going through that kind of difficult journey I joke that hopefully if we can compare compasses, maybe we can figure it out. Like, if we share maps, maybe we can help each other along the way. So that's the goal.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you again to the Shine Tribe, wishing you play, possibility, and peace. So honored to be a part of your Shine Tribe. Subscribe to the soulSHINE podcast to never miss an up level. I love hearing your feedback and your questions, so leave an honest review to help more people find the Shine Tribe. Screenshot and email if you have a 5-star review to hello@soulshine.global, and we'll give you a free downloadable meditation and enter you to win a free private coaching session. Giveaways will occur at every 50 review milestone, and your entry will always remain in the draw. Join our community to learn and practice cognitive emotional tools for personal growth and career success. Visit soulshine.global, follow us on Instagram at soulshine_global, or email hello@soulshine.global. Thanks.